words of wisdom and insight, words which have gestated long in the mind of the speaker, and which will in time shape the lives of many in the Daventry District. But sometimes words can be spoken without much thought. When I go into a school, sometimes, and I talk to the pupils about words, I take with me a tube of toothpaste. I take off the lid and squeeze it so that some of the toothpaste oozes out. And I say that squeezing the toothpaste is rather like speaking words. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't put it back in again. Likewise with words. Once they are spoken, that is it. You can't take them back or unspeak them. So I just want to share with you a prayer, a brief prayer, which I hope will focus minds on the importance of not only speaking wisely, but speaking carefully and appropriately. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Lord, help us to be aware of the power of the tongue, and to know what good and evil it can do. We ask for your grace to help us govern the use of our tongue, so that we speak not only wisely, but carefully. And let us, as listeners of the words that others speak, not take them unduly personally, or misinterpret them, or perhaps read too much into them. Give us grace to reflect on what has been said, and always to think good of those who speak them. Amen. Amen.
So now we go to the election of the chairman. So the council will elect the chairman for the next year. We need a proposer for...
Point of order, Chair, please.
Yeah.
If I could make the indulgence, everybody. Are we not acting unconstitutionally this evening? I'm referring members to Article 2 of our Constitution, namely Article 2.02, which I'm sure everybody is familiar with, but let me help everybody if they've forgotten. Article 2, which relates to members of the Council. 2.02, election and term of councillors. The term of office of councillors will be 4 years, starting on the 4th day after being elected and finishing on the 4th day after the day election. Now, with the recent ministerial decrees, it would appear that we have a number of members here that should no longer be here. They have been here for more than 4 years. I know I'm just a beginner at council proceedings because I've only been here for 12 months, but it does strike me this is a completely undemocratic process, an abuse of power by those who ought to know better. Those in government are not casting any aspersions on people here. So what should be done?
I would ask the military officer to reply.
Chair, we are here lawfully. The law has been amended, if you like, for our purposes because of the order that was recently produced. Whilst that is the normal term of office, obviously things have been disapplied because of that legislation. We are here in the Constitution.
Do we not need to therefore amend? Sorry, do we not need to amend the Constitution, even if it would be temporarily? But otherwise, what purpose does it serve?
Chairman, the law overrides the constitutional matters.
Okay.
Councillor Ritchie.
Chair, I wonder if through you I could ask the monitoring officer, what is the precise bit of legislation that allows our Constitution to be overridden?
So, Councillor Ritchie, I think it would be better if we take it offline and the monitoring officer will reply to you, because I'm sure what our monitoring officer has told you is right and proper, and you will have a reply, and we will share it with all the members. So like that, thank you for raising that very important matter of Constitution, and all councillors will have a written reply by the monitoring officer. Is that?
Fine, Chair.
Thank you. So now, we propose, can I have a proposal for the new chairman, Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm delighted to propose Councillor David Smith, my ward colleague in Weedon, somebody who is well known throughout the village and throughout the wider ward, and also someone who was an immense help to me as a new councillor when I came in 2 years ago. David was patient and helpful, talked me through the odd controversy that we had to encounter over in Weedon, so very helpfully. And I think most members here will regard him as one of the quieter members of council, but as somebody who, when he speaks, does so thoughtfully, especially on planning. And I think Councillor Amos and I will be in full agreement that when it comes to matters of planning, Councillor Smith speaks with great authority. He's been of huge assistance in any queries that we've had over the years in matters of planning, and I cannot think of a better chairman for Daventry District Council.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd also concur with that, Councillor Brown. And our new chairman has been a wonderful mentor to me over the years, and I'm sure he'll be the same with everybody else here. So I wish you a great year ahead. Thank you.
You are very popular in your ward, and I'm sure with all of us. So now, is there any other nomination? None. So I propose David Smith, Councillor David Smith, is the chairman for 1920.
Agreed.
Sorry for that little ballet. You get used to that, the famous pin.
I, David Smith, have been elected to the office of Chairman of Daventry District Council, declare that I take office upon myself and will duly and faithfully perform the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and abilities. Thanks.
Chairman, it's my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks to the retiring chairman, Cecile. With my role as chairman of the county council, we bumped into each other very, very frequently. And I have to say, she represented Daventry District absolutely perfect. Never saw her once have too much to drink. If there was any dancing involved, she was the first one to dance. Her husband was a credit to her. At my civic ball, he actually came and played the guitar and sang 3 numbers, which was very, very pleasant. They were a joy to be with, and they represented Daventry absolutely perfect. So it's my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks to you, retiring chairman.
Yes, I have pleasure in seconding that vote of thanks. I too have come across our retiring chairman in action, as it were, and I've been quite impressed that I speak as a recent deputy chairman who still has the scales to prove it.
we put the proposition to account.
So, I haven't spoken very much when I was chairman. I kept my word my speech very short, and with what my vicar in Arding was saying, I should keep them short and be wise with my words. So I will try to resume or to condense in a few minutes the role of chairman, and I hope that we'll start our new chairman in good stead. We, as chairman, we represent the council as a civic role, and this year I had the chance to have a lot of civic heads across the council that were delightful, and we made discovery of other councils, but they made a lot of discovery from our council. I was fortunate enough, the first invitation I had was at Oslo, and the chain gang, as they are called, were amazed because Earl Spencer took them on a visit for an hour and a half of the house, and they could not believe it. And as a swan song, they came to Brixworth, Formula One, and there, again, they could not believe the quality of what we have in Daventry. And it was just amazing. And during my year at office, I tried to promote as much as I could the beauty of our county. And as such also, as a chairman, you have to raise money for charity. My two charities, which were National Garden Scheme and Rethink, both charities are very much what is nowadays in the news. One is about mental health. We think does a wonderful job in Daventry with no money at all, and they have people from Daventry who garden side by side, being young addict, being widow, or being ex-servicemen who are a bit lost, and together they have the most wonderful allotment, and you can always visit them, have a cup of tea, and also buy some of their product or help them with their fundraising. Natural Garden Scheme has raised this year 3.1 million out of really just kind people who like joining, open their garden for charity, and we show the beauty of our district. And I am proud to sponsor those two charities, and those two charities will have a check for me, 2/3 and 1/3, and I raise £3,000. So I am very pleased. And finally, I will ask you all, it is quite difficult to raise money. And we have one event in the year, which is a civic service. And during the civic service, the chairman invites you in his church to be there. It's part of the decorum, it's part of what to glue us together, regardless of your political party. And James took my civil service and gave also wise words of wisdom. It was enlightening. And when you do that, you can raise quite happily a lot of money, because all the other chairmen can. But when you have the High Sheriff, the Lord Lieutenant, who makes the effort, our MP, who makes the effort, and we have no councillor, or very few Sunday apology, I think it doesn't reflect very well on our democracy and the decorum that our democracy has. So for our next chairman, I made a plea. Please, at his civic service, do come, and if you cannot come, just send your apology so that he knows what he should cater for. And if you cannot come, you make your apology and give him a little donation. It will be gratefully received, I'm sure, by David. So thank you so much for all of you, and now I am going to take my seat at the back. Thank you so much. It's very much appreciated, and it's lovely. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we go to the appointment of the vice chair.
Can't do that yet.
Do you have a proposition?
Chairman, I'd like to propose Councillor Warren, Mike Warren, as Vice Chairman for the coming year. I've known Mike for over 16 years. He's been a councillor in my ward of Malton and Overston for over 16 years. And I think he'll do a very good job as a Vice Chairman. So I propose Mike as the Vice Chairman for the following year.
Do you have a second?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm very happy to second Councillor Mike Warren for the role of Vice Chairman. I too ran across Mike when he first started with the Council. He's been a very solid performer for the Council, and I got to know him very well because for some reason or other, the first half times I met him, I kept calling him Frank, after Frank Warren. So he soon put me right, and I'm convinced that in his Vice Chairman role, he will give you able support, so I'm happy to second it.
Do we have any other nominations? Councillor, when would you like to are we agreed on that? On the,
I, Michael Warren, having been elected to the office of Vice Chair of Daventry District Council, declare that I will take office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of the according to the best of my judgment and ability.
Item 5, apologies for absence.
Chairman, apologies received from Councillors Wayne Howard, Sarah Peck, Colin Morgan, Ian Robertson and Fanny Fraser Allen.
Any others? Okay. Item 6, the minutes of the last council meeting. Is it your wish that I sign the minutes?
Really?
Okay, item 7, declarations of members' interests.
Yes, Chair, I have a declaration of interest under item 14.1, motion in the Council proceeding Rule 12. I shall excuse myself for that point.
Chair, page 76, 78, Overston Hall, I have to not take part in that debate and leave as an open person concerned, as I did at the planning meeting as well.
I'll also declare that one as well, please, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, my speech was to say I was nervous, this would be an understatement. But so far so good, but it's early days, so let's see how things go. Naturally, I'm very much looking forward to this coming year to get out and represent Daventry District across the county and beyond. Don't know what to expect, to be honest, but I'm sure it'll be very interesting, and I shall keep you all posted with my movements of visits and things, nothing more. And yeah, very much looking forward to it. My charity for the year, very apt actually, with us having a mental awareness week this week. My charity is called Time to Talk. Charity based in Daventry. It operates throughout the district and also South Northampton. And it provides support to young people, generally sort of age 13 to 19, but in certain circumstances that support can run up to the age of 25. It provides free therapeutic counselling across a very wide range of subjects, which Councillor Amos will be very familiar with. These subjects, they cover fairly broad. They can run from anxiety through bullying, personal relationships, self-harm, suicidal feelings, drug issues, etc. I don't think we can underestimate the challenges of mental health. I think they can affect anybody, and as strong as and mighty as you think they're going to do, there may be just something just trips you up. So I think that this charity is fantastic, and it assists in what is quite a complex time for young people. They seem to have so many more pressures than I think, certainly I experienced. We didn't have social media, which is a huge challenge, as we've heard in the news, unfortunately, for the past year. So I'm looking forward to working with Time to Talk. I hope you can support the charity as well. Unfortunately, Andy Nixon, the Chief Executive, couldn't attend this evening, but you will all get to meet him at some stage. So yeah, that's my charity. I won't travel on very much more. I should just move through just a couple of things. Our wonderful 5-minute rule, which I think is very generous, because if anyone ever listens to these Radio 4 with just a minute, you are subject to a challenge in itself to not have a repetition, deviation or hesitation. All I ask is that we don't have repetition if we can keep focused, because I think that makes us all much more or much sharper in our decisions and debate through the evenings. And that is it as far as my inaugural speech. So thank you. Okay, so do I say sorry. I should have listened before I left school. So, Chairman's announcements. Just one, which is following on from the Secretary of State's announcement yesterday on unitary government for Northamptonshire. I can confirm that an item has been included in next week's strategy group agenda. The implications, in particular any views on proposed election arrangements, will be considered at that meeting, not tonight. All members are invited to attend. It will be in this chamber a week tomorrow at 6:15.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be aware that I sent an email to you concerning the issues following the announcement from the Secretary of State. And I had hoped that there would have been an opportunity, given that this is the biggest statement that has been made that affects this council, no doubt for years, if not decades. And it seems strange to me that there is not an opportunity to at least have an opportunity to exchange views and thoughts tonight. But the monitoring officer doesn't seem to think that it merits being urgent business and therefore qualifies. We've all received the email from Councillor Miller with attached to it proposals from Councillors Brown and Shepherd, which I found monstrous. The idea that the ward makeup should be shunted to a meeting of a strategy group after months and months of discussion and public consultation, but it would not come back to this council, I feel is an insult to local democracy.
Chairman, it's not about the merit of what's been proposed, and it's not my role to actually impart comment on that. The point is that you have to have business, you have something to decide. You don't have anything to decide that's urgent. The statement has included the ability to receive from council views on the election arrangements that are proposed. That's what the Secretary of State said in the announcement. It's that element which you can make some further submissions. But it's not urgent to be dealt with tonight. There's also the point about needing to have things on the agenda so the public can see what we're going to be talking about. But there's a whole point of the agenda. It's about being able to inform the public as to what is being transacted, what discussion is going to be happening on their behalf. That is the main reason, frankly. If there wasn't going to be the prospect of getting views in, because, say, the Secretary of State set a deadline of 3 days, then I would be saying to you, urgent business for this meeting. But Strategy Group is next week, it can deal with it, it already has the authority to respond to consultations. We'll call this a consultation. And of course, the Chairman normally allows people to speak, members to speak, who come along to that meeting, and everyone is invited.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate that point actually. Strategy Group will be open to all members to attend. As those have done before, they all have a chance to speak if they wish to. This is not urgent business, Chairman, because there's nothing going to happen between now and Thursday that's going to change anything. And on Thursday we can have that debate, and any questions you want to ask can be asked. And I'm sure plenty of answers will come back your way. And also have your input. But the reality is the decision has been taken by government. It's now going forward to Parliament for confirmation. But I think next Thursday is an ideal time to have that debate, not tonight. Thank you, Chairman.
Item 10, announcement of group leaders and deputy group leaders.
For Conservative Group Chairman, it's myself as leader and Councillor Liz Griffin as deputy leader.
Thank you, Chairman. For the Labour Group, myself as group leader and Councillor Ritchie for deputy leader.
As usual, Chairman, I am not a group.
You're leader and deputy leader.
Item 11, constitution of committees.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members will note the schedule on the benches in front of them. There's just a couple of updates to make to that. For Planning Committee, the addition of Councillor Richard Nicklewright, and for Corporate Governance Committee, the addition of Councillor Deanna Edwards. If I could just draw your attention to one point on the reverse side of the paper. The name of the Northamptonshire Police and Crime Panel is corrected to Northamptonshire Police Fire and Crime Panel. On that basis, Chairman, the schedule is complete.
We have a proposer and seconder.
Proposed and seconded.
Councillor Ritchie.
Chair, I wonder if the Labour Group has an opportunity, perhaps not at this meeting, to make a nomination for the local plan steering group. This is an issue that came up during the last year, that there were meetings that we didn't seem to be aware of. But not having thought this, we haven't arranged to put it forward at the moment. I assume that there is no problem in accepting a name if we are to put it forward before the first of September.
Chair, we have... Sorry, Tony, do you want to... sorry, I'll go back to Tony first. Sorry.
Chairman, I think Simon would be best placed to speak on this.
Chairman, if I may, I'm afraid I think probably of all the officers I don't have to cry to their ignorance, because there is a council decision that constitutes the group, I think about 3 years ago. I don't think any of us have to analyse the information on precisely what that decision was, so we will have to go back to the records and check. I think there is a limit on numbers, but I'm not sure beyond that, so we'll have to come back to you in writing, I think.
Chairman, I would suggest that this group is within the council, that if the council wanted to make a change, it could make a change. That could be done. If the council wanted to have a replacement suggested next time, for example, you can take people off committees at council each time which you see necessary. So that is possible to do. So I would go with the list as it stands. And if there's some negotiation that happens, for example, behind the scenes, that might be appropriate to do and put forward an opposite proposal. Because normally when you make a decision on things, you have to allow 6 months, if you like, between the next chance to actually change it. So if it's been 3 years, one would think this could be ongoing. That's how I would see it at the moment. To cover all bases, leave it as is, and then come back with a proposition next time. Councillor Osborne.
Chairman, as a member of that group, I would have thought that that group has nearly finished its work. For the last 3 years it's been meeting. It's out to an inspector to be looking at and everything. I can't see it probably meeting ever again, and if it does, it'll perhaps be only on, should an inspector bring up certain points. I'm sure the chairman will elaborate, but I can't see much point in arguing about adding somebody on when I don't see they've been there much longer. I'm sure the chairman will answer as well.
I'm happy to do that, Chairman. My understanding is that as of December the 19th, it's no longer our plan. It's the Secretary of State's plan. We handed it over for consideration and examination, and they will decide whether or not it's sound and obeys all the rules. Then it comes back to this council to decide whether or not to adopt it. There is no point in having a steering group anymore because there's nothing to steer.
So do we have a seconder? Can I just check on that? Might be useful just to be sure when the examiner comes back with recommendations, there isn't something that might be very dramatic that might cause the council to revisit completely and still need to steer what might be then produced in response. So I'm just wondering about that. I don't know if Simon Bowers wishes to comment on that from a technical point of view.
Information. I would agree with one officer. I think that's probably sensible, but there is the ability to coordinate the group if it should be required.
So did we have a Joe Gill?
There was third.
Councillor Gill. So apologies. So we agree?
We agree.
Item 12. And Chairman, Vice Chairman, committees.
Yes, Chairman, I'd like to propose those on the paper in front of you in bold for Strategy Group, Scrutiny Improvement, Planning Committee, Licensing Committee, Corporate Governance Committee and the Field Standards Committee, Chairman.
You have a second? Do we agree?
Agreed.
Item 12.
Yes, Chairman, again, if I can draw members' attention to there's a copy of the schedule on the tables and also included in the papers. What I'd like to do, if that's okay with you, Chairman, is to take members through this list. There are a number of bodies where there's been more than one nomination come forward and council will need to make a selection in those cases. So running through the list, the first organisation is Citizens Advice Daventry District, where we have two proposed representatives, Councillor Peter Matton and Councillor Wendy Randall. The normal process, Chairman, will be for a show of hands against each name to determine who goes forward.
Okay, so show of hands then, so for Councillor Matt. Thank you. And Councillor Rand. So in favour of Councillor Matt.
Okay. The next one, Chairman, is Daventry Consolidated Charity, where there is one vacancy and two proposed representatives, Councillor Catherine Lomax and Councillor Wendy Randall.
Okay, so we'll take a vote on that and so for Councillor Lomax. And Councillor Randall. So that's Councillor Lomax.
The next one is Daventry and District Disability Access Forum, where we have two proposed representatives, Councillor Alan Chandler and Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
Okay, so we'll take a vote on that. So for Councillor Chandler. Thank you. And for Councillor Dabbs. So that will be Councillor Chandler. Thank you.
Okay, the next body is the Daventry Volunteer Centre, where we have two proposed representatives, Councillor Alan Hills and Councillor Wendy Randall.
Okay, so we'll go through the vote on that. So for Councillor Hills. Thank you. And for Councillor Randall. Councillor Hills.
Okay, next is the East Midlands Councils, where we have two proposed representatives, Councillor Chris Miller and Councillor Ken Ritchie.
Okay, so for Councillor Miller. Thank you. And for Councillor Ritchie.
Next is the Local Government Association General Assembly, and two proposed representatives for one place, Councillor Chris Miller and Councillor Ken Ritchie.
Can I speak on that one, Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. On the last one, by the way, the East Midlands Councils, it would have to be a leader of the council that goes on. That's the normal practice, as the appointee. On this particular one, I have no problem at all for Councillor Ritchie to be nominated for the Local Government Association General Assembly. Gives Councillor Ritchie a chance to go down to the LGA conference. So I'm happy for him to take that in my place.
Okay. Councillor Ritchie, it is.
Then we do two more on the other side of the page, Chairman. First one being the Parking Adjudication Joint Committee. Councillors Wayne Howard and Councillor Ken Ritchie for one place.
Again, Chairman, I'm happy to propose Ken Ritchie for this one instead of Wayne Howard. I'm sure they enjoy it.
And the final body to consider, Chairman, is the Health and Adult Care and Social Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee. This is a nomination only, but we have two proposed representatives for that nomination, Councillor Richard Auger and Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
Chairman, I just want to say one thing about this. I appreciate Councillor Dabbs put his name forward, and I understand the reasons why. I think in most circumstances that would be very acceptable, but I think it's important for our portfolio holder with that responsibility actually to fulfil this position. And I'm sure opportunities arise in the future where you can get involved, Councillor Dabbs, we'll make sure we can do that for you.
Okay, so we'll go for a vote. So those for Councillor Allwood. Thank you. And those for Councillor Dabbs.
Chairman, the rest of the bodies have just a single proposed representative, so no need for selection on those. Thank you, Chairman.
Three.
So we now move to item 13, questions under council procedure rules 10 and 11. Questions on the topic? Okay. So the question will be read by myself this evening. You all have copies anyway, so my picture's not good. Got some agreed. It's been agreed over several years by members of Parliament, councillors of boroughs, districts and parishes is a unitary of any description will not solve the underlying problem of adult care and child care. May I request in your position you will continue to press There's a strategy for both adult and childcare implemented at the outset. The matter of childcare has not been helped by a reduction of £1.8 million within the budget and the appointment of an executive with a salary of over £40 million a year. So the question from Mr. Colin Paul. Due to the lack of formal communication regarding Northamptonshire unitary, and as mentioned by those on high, that the unitary may be delayed or postponed, why do not DDC with their communication portfolio holder and publishing team keep the residents informed?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Paul for his question, some of which I agree with. Sorry, my apologies. That was obviously very worrying, actually, Chairman. I'm going to get sorted out on that one. It's obviously been the councillors for so many years, and they haven't been for the last couple of years. I just want to say thank you, Mr. Paul, for that for the question. I don't necessarily agree with everything you said in the statement. I do agree, though, that he recognised when he was a councillor the importance of social care and health, both children and adults, as part of the overall solution as we move forward into this brave new world. So to answer the questions, well, actually, we now know that the unitary has now been given the green light by the Secretary of State, subject to parliamentary approval. And we also know that the Children's Service is going to a trust. And there's been some very good news, actually, which came out today, and it's been reinforced today, about social care, adult social care and health, where we as a council have been advocating this for some time, that this should be part of the greater solution. We didn't think putting 8 councils into 2 was in itself going to solve everything. We had a very good confirmation today that actually things are moving forward very fast on that particular area now. We have the Secretary of State now advocating that we go down the route of integrating social care and health into the new models, but subject to MP's agreement, which I'm sure will come to agree to the original proposals we were putting forward, and also the Parliament approving. This is a wonderful opportunity for Northamptonshire, which has gone for a very long time, Chairman, as we know in the last few years, to actually come out with a new proposal which may actually lead others along that path. So I think Councillor Paul, who's here, would be delighted to hear that. Because I know he has one that's been having, Colin Paul, sorry. Colin Paul, Mr. Paul, you can see I say Mr. Paul. When he's here, I know. But I'm sure Mr. Paul would be delighted to hear that, if he was here, that things are moving down the right way, which he was advocating himself. Thank you, Chairman.
So, item 13.2, questions from members of the council. Question from Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. This question was addressed to Councillor Miller as the leader of the council. You'll be aware that for several years, residents of Ashby Road and parents of children who attend schools on the road have been campaigning for measures to control the speed of traffic in Ashby Road. Early in 2016, DDC commissioned traffic consultants to assess road safety, and a programme of works was subsequently agreed. DDC then asked Daventry Town Council to meet the £5,700 cost of preparing a detailed quote for the works. But the Town Council, quite reasonably, refused to pay for a quotation when no one would guarantee that the work would be undertaken. No further action appears to have been taken, although residents continue to report vehicles being driven at excessive speeds. There had been some hope, at least amongst residents, that the then Site 5 developer might be required to install traffic cramming measures when aligning the bottom end of Ashby Road. But DDC decided not to impose any such condition. Will the leader of the council tell us how much DDC paid for the traffic consultant's report on Ashby Road? Why DDC agreed to pay for this report if it did not intend to act on its recommendations? And what discussions involving DDC, if any, have taken place in the last 2 years over the case for traffic calming in Ashby Road? Now that it's been resolved that the development of Site 5 will not require the realignment of Ashby Road, will you be prepared to again consider the consultant's report and the programme of works which was subsequently agreed? In response to a question which you asked in October 2017, you maintained that there was no risk of DDC being held partly responsible if a pedestrian were to be killed or injured through an accident which might have been prevented by the measures proposed by the consultants, as it was an NCC responsibility. You accept that, being aware of the findings of the consultant that DDC commissioned, but having taken no action to implement the consultant's recommendations or to secure their implementation, DDC would at least be morally responsible in the event of serious accident caused by speeding traffic.
Chairman, point of order. Point of order is this. Under 10, 11 and 12, we let people read them out. When we all have a copy, everybody in this room has a copy of the questions. To save needless time, can we not accept that the questions are there? They're all in front of us. They're all in front of everybody in this room. And yet we let people read them all out again. I see no point in reading them out. The standing orders and the procedure doesn't say they have to be read out. So what's the point in having them read out, Chairman?
It's been recorded.
It's there in the paper.
Chairman, as the councillor recognises, there isn't anything in the Constitution that dictates it has to be copied or whatever verbally. It's left open deliberately. There may be tone that can be expressed when a question is put before the floor. That's one of the reasons for example. There's nothing to say it should be copied, and I wouldn't want to introduce that in the Constitution.
Can I just make a point on that, actually? One of the things about these meetings is they are recorded. So if a member of the public was listening to this meeting and afterwards, it may be a bit strange for him not to know what the question was. So I think in that sense it makes sense to get the question asked. You know, I entirely understand where you're coming from, Councillor Osborne. So the person listening can actually understand the question and then the answer. That's a personal view.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, sometimes we do have members of the public in this chamber that do not have copies of those questions. So, you know, this is a democratic process, so they need to know what is actually being asked. Thank you, Chair.
I nearly forgot to answer the question here. Sorry, Councillor Richard. Right. I'll make the answer a bit shorter than the question maybe. In October 2015, DDC agreed to pay £5,000 for a road safety assessment. The report recommended changes which were not the same as those desired by the public. Furthermore, the proposed solution on the report was not acceptable to NCC highways due to emergency access concerns, and of course they are the Highways Authority. There have been no discussions in the last 2 years relating to Ashby Road traffic calming project, as far as I'm aware. Site-wide plan application discussions are entirely separate and mainly concern changes to the roundabout. Daventry Town Council agreed to fund a detailed quote that was conditional on DDC agreeing in advance to fund the final project. DDC cannot legally do this as it has due process to follow. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm grateful for that response. I'm not sure if I so entirely understand the difficulties in moving forward. So I wonder if Councillor Miller could just help me in terms of how I report back to residents. Ashby Road, as you will be aware, has various schools. There must be literally hundreds of children that cross that road several times each day during term time. We have had the report that was commissioned did indicate that there was indeed a speeding problem on Ashby Road, and yet we say there's nothing that we can do about it. Yet at our last meeting, how do you explain that, and I'm going to explain that at the last meeting, we decided to spend several £1,000s on a road that was almost goes round the outside of Staverton village, but very few people are using as pedestrians to cross.
I'll come back to that, Chairman, maybe the first thing I would say is that I think it would be very challenging to compare one thing from another because they're quite separate. On the point about the key thing here is, I just think this is where unity will be very helpful. We have one council that does everything. And what we have here is a county council who clearly said the preferred solution report was not acceptable to them. We're not the Highways Authority. I can't remember what the reasons were for the fact it wasn't acceptable to them. There were obviously reasons for that. Well, due to emergency access concerns, that's what they were concerned about at the time. So therefore, you know, we have a lot on our plate as a small district council, Chairman, And what we have to do, notwithstanding the safety issues, I recognise that at the time we had that discussion, but obviously the Highways Authority obviously wasn't concerned with them on the safety issues, they had concerns about emergency access. But I think this is where the unitary actually will be helpful in the future. We won't have this sort of inter-council debates. And even the town council, when they agreed to fund the DCL quote, it was based upon the criteria which we can actually set through due process. So that, in a sense, we have 3 layers here, and hopefully we get to unitary in the town council, things will be at least a bit simpler. There's only 2 layers rather than 3. Now, I know it's not a satisfactory answer, Councillor Ritchie, but the point is, the question itself, I haven't heard this been discussed in the last 2 years anyway, and you raise it now. I'm not sure it's something you've been made aware of or why you raise it now. That's not to ask for a reply, maybe you can let me know outside the meeting. But as far as I'm concerned, I can't see how we can move it forward at this stage.
So moving on to item 41, motion under Council Procedure Room 12.
Chairman, thank you. Chairman, members are doubtless very familiar with the development at Brighton Fields, Northampton, for 1,000 houses. This has been in prospect for literally decades. It was refused in 2001 thanks to the intervention of John Prescott. He was identified there as land development associated with Northampton. He said that that land should be that the brownfield site should be used first. For that reason, we managed to refuse it first in 2001. There were further applications in 2007, and in outline permission for 1,050 was granted in 2011. Throughout, Chairman, the gestation of this development, it has always been in prospect that there should be a primary school. The developer initially proposed 250, and that was then, since 2007, it's been 420 places on 2.2 hectares of land to serve that development. There have been 2 specific detailed applications since the outline in 2011. In relation to phase 1, 376 houses. Those houses are now up to about 290 odd. And phase 2 has recently been consented for another 380 dwellings. There have been 2 106s. In the first 106 relating to phase 1, primary education contributions of 2.2 million have been paid, and that is cash sitting with the County Council designated as being towards the provision of primary education facilities within the local area, not specifically tagged to the school, but towards education provision in the local area. And the second 106, more recently, is specifically towards the provision of primary school, and that's 1.4 million. Chairman, in phase 3 and early years, we have those additions to the 106s, we end up with just over £7 million. The average cost of primary school construction from the data available on the DFE sites, I can see about 40 odd 420 primary schools have been built in the last few years. Average construction cost is about 4 to 5 million. So there's ample space on a capital budget to build the school from developer contributions. The Preston Hedges Academy Trust was applied to a sort of mini advertising tender process in the autumn of 2016. The DFE appointed them in April 2017. And on that basis, the school has been advertised by the Preston Hedges Trust as being open for business, first of all in 2019, and then in 2020. And until June last year, it was still advertised by the Trust as being open for business in 2019. And Chairman, of course, we now have 250 plus families who bought houses on Buckton Field in the reliance of, quite openly and in good faith, representations by the developer, relying on representations by the Trust, that there will be a school there. There was a meeting in March of this year with Preston Hedges, architects, preferred construction builder, and DFE.
The meeting was at Preston Hedges' office. The meeting then decamped to the site to inspect the site, consistent with the development proceeding. 2 or 3 weeks later, Preston Hedges were told by the DFE that they were not proceeding with the project at present. Most odd. Daventry Parish Council have been in contact with the DFE, and the DFE specifically said in response on the letter on the 18th of April, this sentence. In April 17, Bradfordfield Primary School project was approved, progress to the pre-opening stage of the mainstream free school process. Since then, we've been working closely with the school's proposer group, President Trust. From the outset, we made it clear that entry into pre-opening discussions should not be taken as an assurance of opening in any specific year or at all. Now that, Chairman, is astonishing. Comments which we made from the Department of Education in a letter, having committed themselves to appoint an education provider, having committed themselves to drawings, to approach construction builders, and then at that stage, not simply to announce a deferment specifically, but to say that there should be, at the moment, there's no commitment to open at all. We've been delving down into some reasons here. Very briefly, Chairman, it all comes down to surplus and deficit and how you deal with stats. Something we can all know, but in many ways you make stats to prove what you want. The DFE say that there is locally, this year, 240 odd surplus primary school places in the locality. 251 in 2021-22 and 242 in 2022-23. The county say there's a deficit in the locality of 12 today and 19 each year subsequently. Now, Chairman, it depends what you mean by the locality, I'm afraid. It's basically, in the whole of the county, there are 2,500 surplus spaces for education. In the locality, if you include outlying villages, there are a large number of spare capacity. Once you include Boughton and Malton only, you get in the deficit. And that is the nub of the argument on numbers. The county has consistently argued for a new school in a 300 dwelling development. On the basis that 1,000 houses would generate 300 primary school pupils. And in my motion, I quote specifically from a county council letter to the leader, wherein they say that the delivery of the proposed new preschool on Buckley-Fields housing development is absolutely essential in ensuring NCC can continue to meet its statutory obligations of providing sufficiency of school places in this area of the county from September 2021 onwards. Now,
are we almost there, Councillor?
I am. One more point, if I may. There is a modest time bomb in the 106, and I believe that neither the county, certainly the officers that are in the county are not aware of this, and I suspect the DFE are not aware of this little time bomb. And that is this, that if approval for the primary school and full planning permission is not achieved by the 16th of September 2020, okay, and that's a defined date being 5 years from the commencement of development, which was September 15. If approval from the primary school is not achieved by that date, next September next year, then it shall be deemed that the County Council will not pursue the construction of the primary school on the primary school site, and the owners will be able to use the primary school site for other purposes. I'm not suggesting there's any suggestion that the developers will actually invoke that, but it is a very significant factor that DFE cannot ignore. And Chairman, what I would hope is that following approval of my motion tonight, officers will write to the DFE expressing the views that I've generally tried to sum up, and including reference now to import on this 6-point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy to second this motion in the absence of Councillor Sarah Peck, who's the other local ward member to John in that ward, because Sarah can't be here this evening. I'm very happy to second it because I've been involved in this as well, Chairman, to a degree when I'm required every now and again. And as John mentioned, that quote there came from a letter addressed to me from Sally Hodges from the County Council. The key for me is that we have an opportunity to build a brand new school which is needed in that area, and the area will continue to expand beyond its current planning. And if we don't take it now, it'll be lost forever. And that would be a real crime to actually let this go anywhere in this district, where we have growth and housing growth and facilities. I mean, John mentioned the fact that parents have bought houses there on the basis of a school going there. So that again would be a real betrayal if that school wasn't built. This is most unusual to come from the DFE, because normally you expect the County Council maybe be the ones, as maybe what's happened in Liverpool all those years ago. So I was a bit surprised by the DFE, but I think it's about rate of build out. My understanding was, John, they weren't happy about the rate of houses being built out on that site. But anyone goes down there can see how many houses you say, John, 300 now built? And there's going to be a lot more to come. This is going to be 10,050 at the end of the day. So I would hope that the Council can support this, bearing in mind this can happen anywhere in our district, where growth is planned and housing growth is planned, and facilities like schools and roads are part of that deal. Then I think it's very, very important for the children, future children in this area, that that school is built and we can deliver on behalf of what was promised. I have to give credit to one of the developers there who's actually written in support of this particular effort to try and make sure the school does get built, so there's nothing against the developers at all. This is a DFE intervention, and I think John, sort of, to Councillor Shepherd highlighted, maybe at that high level, they don't really understand what's going on the ground, whereas they do locally. And I think that could apply to anywhere in our district, actually. So I would fully recommend to Council we support this motion, and let's hope we can get a positive result from it. Thank you, Chairman.
Are we in agreement?
Very
Thank you. Item 14.2.
Councillor Frost and I have been concerned about the impact of the prolonged closure the Hennenden Road Bridge was having on local people and businesses. I was able to meet with NCC Cabinet members, Councillor Morris and Longwood, to discuss this matter today. Happily, a sensible outcome has been reached. A revised scheme which achieves the safety benefits can be pursued, and NCC has agreed to put in up to 20,000 if the other funding for the overall project of reopening the bridge are not sufficient to cover these works. There is therefore no longer a need for the motion, and it is withdrawn.
Next one. Item 14.3.
Chairman, I think I should declare interest because my name's on this motion and leave the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Thank you. I have actually written to all councillors for my views on it. Thank
you. Chair, can you just agree to move on?
The relevant seconder do not think it necessary for Councillor Muller to leave.
Oh, it's done now.
Are we in agreement with the motion?
Yes.
Hey, what, this one? Do you mean this, the one when...
14.3.
Three. I've never been having it, so it hasn't been proposed yet. It's been moved. It's been moved.
Chairman, it needs to be moved by one or two of the people who proposed the second.
I know we do that.
In moving this motion, I would have been much happier if Councillor Miller had to be here. But fortunately, we tape record all of these things. So he will have ample opportunity to catch up. And I'm told by those who have left the meeting for other purposes that it's always perfectly easy to hear through the gap in the door. But it did strike me that having been a councillor for 3 years, I waited quite a long time for anything on which I could commend a councillor from the Conservative group. Knowing that this council has got perhaps a limited life ahead of it, I was slightly concerned that if we didn't take this opportunity, there might not be another one. But I do sincerely think that the example that Councillor Miller has set here is one that, okay, not everybody is going to follow it, but everybody should at least think about it and appreciate it.
If Councillor Ritchie would have been there during what our vicar said, he will have heard about the power of the tongue, and that will have been a good way. And I think I would like to thank Councillor Ritchie for his kind word about Councillor Miller. But in the same way, I will not be too kind to think we have nothing to common as Conservative. We have been elected here to represent. So I find it very offensive when a councillor of the opposition is telling us that we have nothing to comment. We have been elected by our residents, and I think as such we have the right to represent them as best as we can. Thank you.
Councillor Orban, then Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the sentiments on this, but there is a thing I just wanted to raise in debate. Is first of all, allowances are awarded by an independent body, and what councillors do with those allowances, with those awards, is a private matter, and so therefore I feel these things are private, and Councillor Miller decided to proclaim what he was doing with it. But the principle here is it's an independent process, and what we do with those monies is a private matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As has been said, Councillor Miller has already sent an email to all members, so you do understand his feelings in this matter. He very much feels the significance of an independent members panel, allowance panel, and that all members are free either to take their own allowance without fear or favour or comment of any kind, and he would prefer it to remain that way. He just feels that the extra work, which is considerable, comes under his role as leader, and he feels that he is happy to do it in that respect. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. At the time, I didn't feel at all that the amount awarded was reasonable. So I'd just like to just food for thought. There's a lot of under 25s in this district that work very hard, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and they get £14,074. So for somebody else, of 3 others, to go on that committee, to produce a good piece of work and to be awarded £12,000 to me was just totally unreasonable. So going back to reiterate, we really do commend Councillor Miller on his decision not to accept the £12,000 that was awarded. Thank you.
So those for the motion? Those against?
Don't want to come in.
I don't want to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Members, and particularly Steve Osborne, Councillor Osborne, I know that you've all read the motion, but I won't go through it in extreme detail. Just pick out some information and relevant arguments for everybody. It doesn't give me great pleasure bringing this motion. I am generally supportive of the cinema development, but I've always been concerned and get more concerned as each day goes by at the costs and the chance of it actually failing. We've already incurred costs to set up the new library and transfer everything into the Abbey Centre. So, okay, we spend that now, let's not worry about that anymore. But for the cinema development, it's time for a pause, time to reflect. Was expecting somebody to say, point of order, that we don't need this motion because a cinema operator has been appointed. I'm sure if one had, somebody would have stood up and said that, and we'd all know about it. It would have been well broadcast on the rooftops if necessary. So, unfortunately, I think this motion is required, and members, you need to have courage. It's a shame, but my observations in politics show me that politicians never seem to be able to admit to their mistakes. Sometimes things don't go according to plan, sometimes there may be unintended consequences. But for some reason it's never possible to say we tried, fortune was against us, or we were in error, we must stop, regroup and try something else. Perhaps members will look at the T-Decal debacle. That's quite a nice ring to it, I think. I see what I consider as a grudging apology without prejudice. Never mind that it's just people's lives, the people we represent who have had those lives turned upside down. And I know the apology was only forthcoming after an almighty fuss was created. And
Point of order, Chairman. I think we can debate that matter later. The Councillor isn't addressing the motion which he's intending to propose.
Keep on track, please.
I was just providing an analogy how people seem to find it difficult to say that they're wrong. Okay, I digress a little perhaps, but back to the cinema. We know the expected financial rewards are marginal. We've seen the business plan. So without the operator, the expert partner, we're going ahead at risk. Maybe it would be a reckless development. We can certainly have a go. I'm sure we'd all like to run the cinema ourselves, but we're investing 12.4 million, or 12.4 million at the last count. We can't do this on a whim. It's a major expenditure in comparison to this council overall. We cannot engage a suitable operating expert to ensure the plans are viable and the vision is operable, and we should admit defeat. The idea was commendable. As I say, I'm still in favour of it, but perhaps in this digital world, where streaming over the internet is now the norm, cinema perhaps is no longer an attraction it may have been several years ago. Members, we should be honest with ourselves and at least pause for reflection. Remember that this project was brought into the Chamber several months ago, way back in 2018, can't remember exactly when, but within the last 12 months. And at last full council in February this year, there was no progress on this appointment. Nothing had been progressed at all, as far as we're aware. No official announcements. We are 3 months on from now, still no announcements. So this motion provides an additional 3 months to make some progress. If there is still none, then we should cancel and move on. Don't stick your head in the sand, people. Do not ignore reality. So just to remind everybody of this proposal, this council resolves with immediate effect to postpone all further work on the cinema project until a suitable operator is appointed, and that should an operator not be found within 3 months of today's date, the project should be cancelled and alternative uses sought for the former library site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll speak a bit louder than normal because I've been given instructions. Behave. The motion recognises that this council is concerned to promote leisure activities in Daventry and thereby encourage improvements in the economic activity and well-being of the town and its residents. That is why the council has expended considerable monies on a number of initiatives in recent years to promote sports and recreation facilities. The construction of a cinema complex, together with a public square and additional leisure facilities, was a manifesto commitment by the Conservative group at the last District Council elections. All property development is risky, yet property development continues at pace on a number of diverse commercial and residential schemes which have had or will have a positive effect on economic activity and the well-being of residents. Two of the risks relating to the cinema complex have been eliminated. Planning permission was granted in February 2019 and the 6-week judicial review period ended in April 2019 with no challenges being made. The relocation of the library to the Abbey is now complete and opened on the 13th of May, the official opening taking place on the 24th of May. Design of the cinema continues to enable a final scheme for council to approve with certain changes for the council to approve and establish the construction contract price. 2 serious offers have been received from operators. Both will fit out to a greater or less degree. Due diligence is being carried out on covenant strength. Now here's a realistic programme. The start on the site will commence probably the end of this month, June 2019, with asbestos removal and demolition. That would probably be a separate contract. An agreement for a lease with the selected operator will be completed at the same time as the construction contract is entered into. Going to be a bit of juggling at that point. Archaeological fieldwork will follow demolition in July 2019. Hopefully nothing will be discovered of great significance. Pile foundations will commence in August 2019. We're hoping to complete the building shells by July 2020, with a fit-out commencing in August 2020, subject to agreement with the contractor and depending upon the completion of external works. Hopefully the cinema will be opened by February 2021. Although the motion rightly recognises that the council has done a tremendous job so far, and it has, nevertheless, I ask members to continue to support the cinema project by voting against this motion. Now, I don't propose to go into any further technical and legal details, but I do reserve the right to come back if necessary. Thank you.
Any other speakers? That's right.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that normally if somebody proposes a motion, first of all, before it goes into debate. Am I wrong? Seconded? You usually second a motion before it goes to debate, do we, or not?
It's been proposed, it's already been proposed.
It's usually seconded. I haven't seconded it. I didn't say I seconded it, it just went to Councillor James, just took off. Normally we second the motion first before it's open to debate, I believe.
Well, the papers quite clearly say here, Councillor Dabbs and yourself.
It does, but we usually stand up and say that anything can happen in this council.
Chairman, there's a distinction. This is a motion on notice. So in the Constitution, motion on notice has already been proposed and seconded by putting it forward, and it needs to be only moved at this meeting, and Councillor Dabbs moved it. Yeah.
So we're going to vote. So
Can I just ask a question? So just to clarify, there is still no operator in place. Is that correct?
Negotiations with an operator are still proceeding well, with terms agreed and solicitors working on legal documentation ready for signature.
Therefore, can I have some sort of clarity of when we expect that to be signed? Is it within the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? If it's with a solicitor, there must be an end date in sight.
We just refer to officers signed out.
Thank you, Chairman. It's basically helpful to Council to explain the way we're seeking to handle the risks. This was aimed set out in the business plan, but for professional memories. We're entering into potentially 2 large contracts. One is a large construction contract to build cinema complex. The other is an agreement to enter into a lease with a cinema operator once the building is complete. Ideally, those will be entered into on the same day, because we don't want to be in a situation where council promises to deliver a building that it is, for whatever reason, incapable of delivering. And equally, we don't want to build a building where there's no operator, ideally, although that was touched in the business plan in the first place. So either on the same day or very close to each other, we will enter into both contracts. And that, at the moment, will be a dual trustee July, most likely time.
Are you speaking?
Yes, and I think with what Councillor James said, it is right and proper to congratulate our portfolio holder and officer for the hard work they have done.
Okay. We don't have any other speakers, so we go to those for the motion.
Sorry, Chair, should we go back?
And those again?
Chair, point of order. It's sometimes quite difficult to hear you. If a number at the back of the room did not vote on that particular vote, it's because we were not aware that you were calling for a vote.
Item 14.5.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't speak too long on this one. I think it's fairly self-explanatory from what you've got in front of you. Those of you who know me will know that this is a strong area of passion. Councillor Hills has worked with me on a project that I did. To set up a Daventry District Youth Council. I engage with upwards of 1,300 young people from across the county every year on personal development projects, and this is something that comes up time and time again in terms of their interest in politics. But what we also see coming up from when we survey them, we do our research with the young people, is that there seems to be this block, or they feel that there is a block in getting involved with politics, that there's this distance there. So I would like to see Daventry District strive to put in place a youth council of its own. The membership of that to be open to all residents within the district council. Obviously, further discussion on what numbers and ages that could be. For DVC to provide logistical support to allow this to run. For elected representatives from this particular youth council to be entitled to attend all public meetings with speaking rights similar to members, but obviously without the voting rights of members. For DVC to liaise with all relevant schools and colleges in promoting membership. Not just limited to schools actually, there are various other organisations as well that I'm sure would be happy to get involved with this. Myself as well would be happy to be really involved with this, should it go ahead. And I really think that this could be something that could perhaps be a legacy and used to go forward when we move to the shadow board and the new unitary authorities that are there to carry on a similar project over the years.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. I personally would like to commend Councillor Ramsey for the work that he does with young people. And as he said, I've had the pleasure of being involved with him in some of these projects. Now, the principle of this motion, to me, is correct. But my problem, and I say this honestly, is the timing. The Unitary Council involves a whole new aspect. It means new councillors, and it also means a new council will face new challenges. Therefore, at this stage, I oppose the motion, as I believe a new youth council to cover the whole unitary is and will be needed from the changeover to the new authority. I recommend this should be submitted to the Shadow Board of the West Northampton Council to investigate and implement, and I firmly and genuinely believe this is the right way to go and to move it forward, so that we have consistency with one council for all our young people that has a voice and gives them the opportunity to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I pretty much agree with what Councillor Hills has said there, and do respect the fact that you do a lot of work with the youth of this district, so thank you for that. Obviously, just to go back, there are timing issues on this with the new council and other difficulties. I mean, just a suggestion here that we could actually take this to scrutiny improvement, because you could argue it's an improvement in the democratic process of this council within the district, and so that would be equivalent to a working group, which would be very, very welcome to come along and join in on, and maybe put something in place with this council for further discussion with the new unitary authority. And I would think that's probably the easiest and best way to go, to actually have something in place for you on that. So I think that's a good opportunity for you.
Yeah, thank you. I love it. I think it's exactly what we should be doing. But again, it's just a timing issue. And I make a proposal to you, sir, that as we develop into the shadow councils, that if you get selected and elected on your party to join that body, then you'll have an ally in me to fight for this. My big concern is that we could do all this work, and then, you know what politics is like, we don't get the movement in the unitary authority to continue it, and then we break people's hearts. You know, this is something that I think we have to do for the future. You're a great example to the youth about being a local politician, so let's get together across party and let's get this through the shadow body, and let's make sure it's part of the new unitary.
Councillor Brown? Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Ward has stolen my thunder somewhat. Councillor Van, if he wishes to work with me to put forward a manifesto or a paper that can be considered by the West Northampton Joint Committee, Councillor Rich is also on there. You know, absolutely make sure that we have youth representation as early as possible and as strongly as possible on our unitary authorities, and on the shadow, because having the voice of youth heard as we go forward and set up new councils is going to be absolutely vital. Those councils are going to determine so much of the future prospects and the shape and form of the district in which these young people live, as well as our wider area. So I completely concur with my colleagues who have spoken previously. I think the spirit of the motion is absolutely fantastic, but we are very sadly on the wind down in Daventry District, and I think we need to be looking to the future, and this is certainly a fantastic idea for the future.
Councillor Richard. Thank you, Chair. I originally wanted to contribute on a sort of slightly different angle, but given what has been said, look, the new shadow body won't be able to do anything. The new unitary body is not going to be here with the resources to do anything for 2 years, and I would be very surprised if this was going to be the first item on it, the first meeting that it actually holds, when it has got the executive authority to actually make progress. I hear what's been said about the scrutiny committee that we have at the moment. I see it that this motion is not calling for further discussion. It's actually calling for something to start happening, rather than being buried in the bureaucracy of the of DDC. I just feel that is the wrong approach, that we need to do something. Now, what I want to say, 2 years, if that is the time that this is going to take, that is a long time. To say a week's long, a long time in politics. 2 years for a young person is ages. We are in a position where we know that the electoral turnout for the younger age group, 18 to 25, it did improve hugely at the 2017 election. We don't know what happened here. We assume that in Daventry it would have been an even bigger increase because of the quality of one of our candidates. But nationally, it did improve, but it was still well below the average. Now the problem is that these figures are very, very misleading, because all the evidence suggests that electoral registration amongst the 18 to 25s is very, very low. Turnout only measures the ratio of votes to people who are registered, and that is a problem. But I think that this offers a way of trying to get more people onto the register, and the way that I would like to see it done, you can now register to vote when you're 16. You might not be able to vote until you're 18, but you can register at 16. There are many states in America that for the last decade have been using the procedure of getting people onto the register at 16 by going around schools and getting them signed up onto the register. Of course they will lose some that will move from Family Hall or move from the area, but by and large most people then start off on the electoral register. And I feel that if we could take a lead here in doing that, I cannot see any reason why we should not, because other local authorities sign up people in colleges, why we can't go to schools that have got 16 and 17-year-olds, get people onto the register, and you then also have the beginnings of a register. It doesn't cover younger people who might want to take part in a youth council, but you then have the facilities to be able to approach young people and actually contact them, get something like this started.
Councillor we had one at County Council a year. I had great thoughts for it when it started. I can say that it wasn't too successful. Perhaps it wasn't done right. I don't know. The only thing they succeeded in was talking about bullying at school. It wasn't on the same basis of going to committee meetings like you're talking about. Anyway, it's no longer working. The reason why I don't see it working here is that it appeared that most of the things that young people were interested in talking about were not things that Daventry District Council do in the main. They were things that County Council were responsible for. Which is one reason to perhaps not have it, not to consider it now. I also would be amazed at the thought of a lot more people, whether they be young people or whoever they are, having the same ability of members of the same as councillors, the ability to speak at planning committee. Can you imagine some of those controversial planning committee ones with another, doesn't matter whether they're young people or old people, with another 20 speakers having the same rights? Some of those applications could take 3 hours. But I think it's something to look to, and I wouldn't be against it if it was introduced the right and proper way. But I think that a unitary authority encompasses more things that they actually are responsible for than just this authority. I mean, what would they come along and talk about? No, I think it would be better left to a unitary chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, I think Councillors Pritchard and Ramsey, who proposed this motion, had a very good reception to it, because obviously I think the motion is actually agreed with the principle. The issue is about timing. And going back to Councillor Richard's point, they have to wait 2 years, because in a year's time we're going to have shadow elections for the new unitary in the West, where 93 members will be elected to that shadow unitary. And I can't see any reason why at that time discussions around this can't kick off. And I think Councillor Osborne's point about county and district is correct. So when it's unitary, they encompass everything. So that would be an excellent time for that to be kicking off. So I would recommend to you, Councillor Ramsey, I know you've got a great passion for this, that actually that's the time you really get going on it, at that shadow unitary stage next year, only a year away now, and maybe in the interim period you and other colleagues can start to plan how we can actually across the whole area of West Northamptonshire maybe pull things together, and at that point then take it forward from there. So I think everyone supports the principle of what you're saying here, it's just purely a matter of time at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to, a few words for you really, in terms of the charity that you've chosen. Something that I've been involved in with many, many years' time to talk and young people being referred there and receiving excellent support. And when I was in practice in Coventry, 25 years I've spent with children and young people as a nurse practitioner, and now in the university sector. And you're quite right. 2 years is a long time. At the moment, children and young people are having to encounter something like 80% of 15, 16-year-olds in terms of hard online pornography, which then causes sexual assaults. They have to put up with cyberbullying. They have to put with local infrastructure that's not there for them. They have to look for, in terms of accommodation that may not be available. On a day-to-day basis, problems within schools. Infrastructure when people don't listen to what they want. I've had a liaison with Coventry City Youth Council, who is a very robust and successful youth council, who impact not only looked after children, but children from right across the city. So it's a very difficult time currently for young people, which is why they use services like Time to Talk, and many, many others. There are nearly 1 million children and young people with mental health problems. This district also has its fair share. So that's the background of adolescents currently. And you may argue there's a disconnect, as Councillor Osborne asked. Most of these are county council matters. Well, they're not actually. If you think about what this council does, and some examples are from the expenditure for the refurbishment of the country park and the consultation with young people, making sure what they want and what's purposeful. From the Reach for Health building, the health services that are available for rehabilitation services in the district, and then having a say for that. In terms of communication of the council and consultancy, when we ask for opinions, and making sure they're involved within that, and that can all be facilitated within this chamber through up to 16, 17-year-olds. My understanding is that children and young people are not often given a voice, they're not advocated for. And while I understand the arguments in terms of timing, a year or two is a long way away. 1 year to set things up, and then how that looks like, that may not be the priority of that shadow unitary. We have to make sure that if you propose this now, then there needs to be either an amendment or an agreement that we involve them. Because I look around this chamber now, and especially when I look at children, young females, have a much more difficult time arguably than boys. I mean, there's 8 or 9 representatives. We all have a responsibility and have an opportunity to mentor and help young people in local government and have a voice and to go forward and have a position with this council. So I would advocate that we do this now, or we work towards and make a consensus and agreement that's going to happen if we can't do that right now. Because at the end of the day, there's many legacies that this district, a well-run district, is going to leave, and I think this would illuminate the path for Unitary Authority and beyond to have children and young people involved within local government and having a voice and having an actual position with decision making on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back to a couple of things that said, and thank you all, because it was quite a warm reception to that, so lovely to do. I just like to point out, Councillor Osborne did bring up not understanding things and using planning meetings as an example, but it is stated in the motion excluding planning and licensing committees in there. It does bring up a point though I wanted to make. We often discredit young people for not being able to understand things, but I mean I myself, there are times in this council where I don't quite understand what's going on, but I will ask for clarification instead. Yeah, they are able to do that themselves as well. And like issues that if you think maybe they're not under sort of a district remit or a local remit, going back to the example of 1,300 at least young people I work with every year, as part of that programme, what they are committed to do is to carry out a community project in their home community. So whether that's supporting local charity, setting up their own project or another community group. We even had some running a community project in the town who wanted to take a break to go and see the consultation of the plans for the cinema and the library. So they are very interested, they are very engaged, and it is a great opportunity to give them voice. But yeah, if this is to be turned down, and I understand that that's not the reason that people don't agree with what it is. If there were to be an amendment to, again, not quite sure how it would work, but to go to scrutiny improvement, to have that kind of working group process, which I'd be happy to work with any councillors to bring that forward and get that conversation going, I would also welcome that. So, thank you.
So, very briefly in response to the point that Councillor Lambs has just raised, I'll happily sit down with him at any time to discuss the machinations of how we bring something to scrutiny, any other options that he wants to discuss, because I think this is massively important.
Brilliant. Let me ask Councillor Rowland, do you wish to bring an amendment forward?
No, that's good.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good.
I'm advised that you can't bring an amendment, but you can alter what you've done.
May I propose the amendment then? Simply that we insert at the top of the motion, or rather, when it says this council refers to the Scrutiny Improvement Committee the following proposal, something along those lines. Sure, I'm monitoring off somebody that time.
First, there needs to be a second, but before you get into seconding and debating if need be, there are a couple of points in there which do give me some concern from a legal point of view. So it would be sensible to have it considered by others, and some officer input too. For example, saying voting rights as members, that's a difficult piece that legislation might not be able to comply. Now, certain bodies, for example, which might be have to be excluded, if you like, have to be excluded. So the private sessions at a public meeting, for example, those people would not be able to attend because they're members of the body. Things like that, is the voting rights in particular. So an amendment to take it through to scrutiny.
Apologies for you, Chairman. It does, the motion does say without voting rights.
Sorry, my apologies. Speaking rights.
Okay.
Apologies.
Do you have a second?
Well, I don't want to second it, no. I don't want to make a comment.
The amendment?
The amendment, yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy to second that amendment if words could be put to that form whereby certainly the conversation and the planning can start. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just say, Chairman, I can't see any problem with scrutiny improvement want to look at ways of improving young people's offer in the district as a starting point. And I'm not sure that's the words you'd be happy to take that on board as your sharing scrutiny. Because on the first paragraph, which is offering young people in the district better opportunities, I thought that's an opportunity that scrutiny could look at on that alone, forgetting the rest of the motion where there might be some duties. I don't know if that's something you consider, Councillor Brown.
Chairman, I'm having difficulty in adequately wording an amendment that doesn't effectively negate the motion, which I understand to be unconstitutional. I don't know if Councillor Ramsey would be satisfied with simply a promise in public at full council that we will bring this to the next scrutiny meeting.
What I can suggest, Chairman, is where it says therefore resolves, to pick up the spirit of the meeting, it's not me trying to suggest the wording per se. But therefore resolves to invite S&I committee to consider establishing the Daventry District Youth Council on the following basis. We've not killed the motion, we've put it somewhere else for them to consider S&I. You could then get a report back. That is one route if you wish. Obviously you need to take a vote on that amendment, and if it carries then it becomes the motion we finally vote on it. Otherwise if it's lost we go back to the original.
Thank you for letting me speak again, Chair. I was going to say a similar thing to Councillor Brown here. I mean, I'm quite happy. I think that's a good amendment. I think I'd be quite happy to say yes on that. But this can just be brought to scrutiny in the usual manner. I don't think, that's just how it is. I don't think it needs an amendment.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to come back on this. Firstly, the point that was just made. I don't think we need an amendment to take it before scrutiny. Scrutiny is a panel. They are quite entitled to look at it and make comment or recommendations or whatever from there. One of the reasons why I oppose this, I go back and Councillor Osborne mentioned about when the County Council had a youth parliament, etc. And I was on it, I was on, had a role there where I attended lots of the meetings, etc. And one of the problems, and I agree with Councillor Osborne on this, that it wasn't particularly well organised. But we did have some of the elected representatives, two of them from the Daventry District, who came along to some of our meetings. Long time ago that they came along. They gradually dropped out. When I asked them why, they said the very thing that Councillor Osborne mentioned. We didn't find a lot of things that were being discussed were relevant to what we wanted to discuss. Now, if we're going to do this, you've got to do it properly. No doubt about that. There's no use us forming a youth council and agreeing to this if then the others don't agree, because it becomes fragmented. Yeah. You've got to bring it in when you start the unitary, and we're talking about January 2020. If we do that and we get it right, and there can be some help from the scrutiny committee itself, then I believe we can carry it forward, that our young people will benefit, and it will be able to be agreed amongst the unitary itself. If it's not agreed, then I can see problems. It becomes fragmented, and you want to start off on the right foot. So my saying that I oppose it is for no other reason than that. We've all said that we back it, we want to follow our youth, and I've been involved with youth for over 40 years. For over 40 years. Well before I came to the council. And I believe that our youth, they are our future. And you're right, we should support them. But if we're going to do it, let's do it properly, and I stick to my original reasons. And I think then scrutiny can have a look at it as a formal procedure without any additions or changes, and then we can move forward from there. And that's where I come from here.
Yeah, we're going on in circles a bit, Chairman. I'm just thinking we should reject the motion on the grounds we said originally. But Councillor Brown's made a very clear statement, and I trust Councillor Brown. I think many members of this council will do that. When he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. I think on that basis, Councillor Brown said he'll take it forward. I think we should reject the motion on the timing issue, but actually recognise that Councillor Brown said he'll look at it, scrutiny and improve it.
Agreed. Yeah.
No question asked.
So, back to the original motion then. So we move to the amendment then. Can we get towards a reminder of what that is?
Can we withdraw it? Can we withdraw it, Chairman?
Withdrawal if both parties agree to propose the seconder and the meeting consents.
Is Councillor Ramsey happy for me to withdraw it on the basis that we will subject to our proposal? I withdraw the proposal.
Thank you.
And I second.
So no, we are now back to the original motion then.
Yeah.
So those for the motion. Those against? Okay, so item 14.6.
Thank you, not going to read it. I think that Councillor Osborne made a good point from the point of view of motions. The difference of a motion and a question is that questions don't actually appear on the agenda that people would have got when they look at their screens. I'm not going to read it, but let me just sort of summarise. We're heading for a disaster unless we can seriously reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases. What the experts tell us is that over the next decade or so, we could easily be seeing a 2-degree increase in the average world temperature. It would lead to countless deaths from more floods, more storms, and of course there'd be more famines because of the difficulty that many people would have in growing the crops they need for their food. So it is a disaster that we'd be heading for, an international one, but it would also be a disaster, I think, for us here in Britain too. Not just because something is bad for the world, it is also bad for Britain. But we have many coastal communities here that would be threatened with rising sea levels. It kills. We had the case just not many weeks ago of a coroner blaming the quality of air for the death of a young girl in London. So it's something that we cannot stop climate change, but surely there are things that we can do. If we have action, both by national governments and by local governments, by individuals, by industries, by institutions, if there is concerted action, it is predicted that that whole process can be slowed so that our situation does not actually get any worse. The motion is not a criticism of DDC. I'm aware that DDC has got its policy on greenhouse gases, it's got its targets on recycling, it's got, there's the provision that is already making for greater use of electric cars and these sorts of things. But there is always so much more in this field that could actually be done. What I'm suggesting is that, again, that there should be a working group. And I will respond to the proposal that's been put by Councillor Brown, but that's not what I'm thinking of at all. Because I don't believe that we are necessarily the people in this room that have got the knowledge and the ideas and the energy that can actually change things for the better here. I just think that we need to be looking outside. We need to be setting up something that's going to bring people in, that is people working together, that somehow that gives the leadership to the community. And you can't give leadership to the community by parking something with a task panel in a committee of 5. We need to be out there actually doing something. And that's why I feel I titled this motion Climate Emergency so that it matched, not the word of the right reason, but as a title, with motions that many other councils have visited or have passed. Concerning with hindsight, it might have even been better if it had been described as environmental emergency. Because there are all the other things too that clearly the sorts of people that are concerned about climate change will also be concerned about. The pollution of the world with plastics, the use of insecticides that's killing the insects we need for pollinating our crops, all of the other things that are linked to how we actually save our natural habitat. So my proposal is that, look, we should be endeavouring to be the lead within our district with this. And say finally that the Herald, the paper that was the Glasgow Herald, this morning had an article reporting on a competition that is already developing between Edinburgh and Glasgow as to which of these two cities will be the first city in the UK that is carbon neutral. I would like us to aspire to be at least as good as the Scots.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm voting to move the amendment that is in front of everybody on their pieces of paper, and I think in the interest of the recording and clarity, I'll go through where I have amended the motion. So I'm proposing to delete the words "establish a climate emergency working group" and replace those with "urgently refer the matter to scrutiny and improvement for the task panel to be convened at the earliest available opportunity to investigate whether DDC is doing all that it can to minimise its impact upon the environment," and then deleting whose remit will be to, and examine how DDC through its actions can provide leadership to local communities in seeking ways of reducing harmful emissions. The amendment then deletes working group where it appears in the basic task panel. I've deleted the word politically balanced purely because there isn't a need for political balance within scrutiny task panels. I have still stipulated that it should be cross-party. We shouldn't avoid having cross-party representation. And then lastly, I've inserted the words "or residents" after "experts," and again tidied up the words "working group" and replaced them with "task panel." Now, Councillor Ritchie has made an allegation that we're seeking to merely park this on a task panel in front of a committee of 5. You'll have to explain to me the difference between a working group and a task panel, because as I understand it, within Daventry District Council, a task panel effectively takes the place of a working group. I understand that he wishes to bring in people out who will expand upon the expertise of councillors and people who we generally have access to. There is nothing to stop scrutiny and improvement inviting people from outside the council to address it. It's within the constitution, it's one of scrutiny's abilities. Those people don't necessarily have to accept our invitation, but nor would they have to accept an invitation of a working group. As far as I see it, Mr. Chairman, there is nothing that a task panel cannot do that a working group could do. The only possible difference is that people would possibly be co-opted on to a working group were it to be formally established by full council. However, given the importance of the issue at hand, I would anticipate that there would be a high number of councillors willing to take part in this body of research. It's an exciting project, and I think it's incumbent upon us all to do whatever we can to combat climate change or damage to our environment. And I think the fantastic thing about the proposals that Councillor Ritchie suggests that we look at is that not only do they benefit the climate and the environment, but actually in many ways they're money-saving ideas and they're future-proofing the workings of local governance. So I would argue very strongly that this is not to undermine the motion in any way. It's merely making it more DDC friendly. It's adapting it to our working processes here. And if the people involved have the necessary appetite to make the changes that Councillor Ritchie is proposing, then it will happen just as effectively as it would have done were a working group to be established.
Do you have a second?
I'd like to second this motion as environmental portfolio holder. There's always room for improvement. I totally agree with the principles, and I would welcome any recommendations that come out of the task panel with a view to improving our performance.
I think Councillor Brown has said everything far better than I could, so nothing more to say. Thank you.
I received an email about this it was from one of my constituents saying, would you do something about global warming? This is a global issue, and so I've been racking my brain on what can I do as an elected member to actually try and do my bit. And I was really so pleased to see this come through, and grateful for the Labour group for actually raising this issue, because it solves certainly a problem and a promise I made to a constituent that I would do everything I can. I think the amendment is smart. It just allows us to work it within our own process without any undue bureaucracy. Achieves exactly what we need to achieve. And for once, I've seen the global turned into a local, and I think that is smart politics. Is with a big global issue, how do we make it real to us and local to us? I think this provides it. The amendment adds to it, and so I would go along with the amendment, and let's get on with it.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the amendment. I know my colleague Councillor Ritchie isn't as happy. It might be a moot point because you can invite experts and other people on the task panel. I will point out, and I will address the elephant in the room, it may be uncomfortable for some people, but I will get corroboration from my fellow councillors in the Corporate Governance Committee, including the Chairman and others. Time and time again I've been in that meeting and I've addressed the Council's performance in terms of landfill tonnage and CO2 emissions. We have been through this. I have had commentary that the original targets were unattainable from our previous provider, Amy, and then those targets disappeared, although they remained red for a period of time before they disappeared. And then I also asked for what targets would be within the new partnership. So when you do carry out this task panel, if I may, Councillor Brown, there needs to be some benchmarking here. Targets are there to be met, not ignored, and I know it's some difficulty meeting them, but let's benchmark against others to make sure that we're actually going in the right direction. That's all I would add.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I find myself quite liking this motion. I think it's a very good one, and I think Councillors Ritchie and Pritchard to be commended in bringing it forward. I think I also like the proposed adjustment by Councillor Brown, which I think tightens the wording somewhat. However, notwithstanding that, there is still one issue with it that I am not totally contented with, and that's the remit for the working group as originally proposed, the task panel as proposed to be amended to. Looking at the third bullet point on page 2, the remit of that group or panel would be to examine DDC's investment portfolio with a view to recommending the termination of any investments which are in environmentally damaging commercial activities. Now, on one level, I understand where that is coming from, where it's trying to get to, but I would suggest it is perhaps a little superficial and naive. If this council were to identify, or the panel group was to identify that the council had investments in an environmentally damaging commercial activity, I would question how divesting ourselves of it helps the environment. It certainly helps the PR of the council, but if we divest ourselves of the investment, somebody else will have taken that investment on, which means another party then has an investment in an environmentally damaging commercial activity. So in what way has the environment been helped by that? I would suggest not at all. I would hope that the working group or task panel, if this gets passed in whichever form, applies a bit more attitude to that and explores whether or not, if it finds any investments covered by this, whether or not any leverage that the council has by virtue of having that investment can be deployed to bring about change in the environmentally damaging activities. In some instances, shareholdings in a publicly listed company, which I suspect we don't have, we would have no influence at all because we'd be a very small proportion. If it was ownership of a property, though, the other extreme, we probably have absolute control because we are the owner of the property. And I would suggest that we should explore any ways that are open to us under this to bring about improvements to the environment rather than simply putting some clear water between us and an environmentally damaging activity. I think I'll conclude with that. I'd just like to conclude by asking a question, Mr. Chairman, which I suspect you won't have the answer to, but possibly the Section 151 for certain will. And does this council, what classifications of investments does this council have that might be caught up in this, apart presumably from properties?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, certainly in terms of the many monies that we have available are invested in banks and building societies and other authorities. I was concerned myself when I read that, though, in terms of what the scope of what that statement meant, because investments, and I immediately thought of our investment properties, would we then turn certain tenants away? So clarity would certainly be needed as to what that meant.
Councillor Ritchie, I would like to reply to the debate, but does your invitation suggest the debate is over? In terms of other speakers.
We will. I think we have an amendment. I think it's been unseconded.
Yeah. In that case, if I can speak. Can I just very quickly, I don't wish to respond in any great detail to Councillor Nickeright's comments. I spent most of Friday of last week in very plush offices in London as a director of a company, a not-for-profit company, that finds us now has got 45 million to invest. And there's a huge range. It is a huge, huge business, ethical investment. It is there. And we make progress, not just because individuals, but because institutions and organisations decide to make a stand for what they want their money to be working for. But that's a separate point. The main thing I want to come back on is what we actually do with this motion. I'm grateful for the positive things that people have said. But look, we've seen in recent weeks, we've seen the Extinction Rebellion protests in London. Now, these were not all long-haired anarchists. They included middle-class women from rural England and places that were there because of their concern with what's happening. We have seen protests all over the country by school students skipping school because they want to go out and they want to make a stand with us. We have that wonderful picture that we've had of our political leaders sitting around a table being told what they need to do and what the concerns are by a Norwegian, perhaps a Swedish teenager. There are people out there who want to see action, who want to see things happening, who want to get involved. Are we simply going to say that the extent of our leadership is to create a task panel of a scrutiny committee that only has 5 members and doesn't even operate like other scrutiny committees so that we don't actually, so we have somebody of the controlling group chairing it? Every credit to the work that Councillor Brown actually does. But that, to me, is not seizing the energy. It is not going out and bringing in the people that want to have a proper debate in these things, which is why I don't think that we will be responding with the urgency to the people that have written to Councillor Arger and so on, who want to see the council actually doing something with this, of saying that we have created a task panel. I think that we want something that has got the status that when it reports, and let's give it a decent length of time to meet, it will then report, and it will report directly to the council. And it needs to have the space to be able to bring in young people, people who are still involved in these protests in schools. It needs to have people who run the schools, who can actually talk about, what role can schools and colleges play in developing that understanding. But it has also got to be all of the other people, and there must be hundreds of them, that are knowledgeable, that are concerned, and that are passionate about these issues, that are within our district, that we want to harness that energy. And I don't believe you harness energy by creating a task panel or scrutiny committee.
Thank you. Okay, so we have proposed amendment, it's been seconded, so all those in favour of the amendment. Again. So, do you have any other amendments to that? Do you agree with the amendment?
So, this has been coming up for the last few years now, and I keep thinking I get motions passed and then find that they're not actually passed as I thought they were. But just to sort of summarise for councillors serving on outside bodies, that they do produce a yearly report, and if they fail to comply with that, could we have them removed and have somebody who'd really want to represent, bring back to the council ideas and maybe something that goes on the agenda. Because I always seem to struggle with actually what we're on outside bodies for. Because do we just sit there and listen? Because we never seem to bring anything back and take anything forward. So I just think, do we just go there to listen and just say that we attended and tick a box? or are we actually serving a purpose? So, which was why I've always come back to the point that I would, like to see a yearly report to know what is happening within that outside body and if there is anything that we can do as a council to make a difference. So that's basically around my motion, can we have a yearly report so that we do know what's going on? And if people aren't willing to do that once a year, then could they be removed and let somebody who, really wants to take an interest take on that role?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank Councillor Randall and Councillor Richard for that motion. I have to say it's self-defeating by what it says in the motion. I mean, referring to paragraph 2. Motion officer subsequently advised the motion was not enforceable as DDC cannot take action against members who are deemed to have failed to report as requested. And on the last line it says the council therefore reaffirms its view that all reps and outside bodies should provide annual reports and resolves to remove members from their positions as representatives if they fail to comply. Don't have the power to do it. So it's a non-motion. What I would say, though, Councillor Randall, you're on the LSP and you never reported. You didn't even turn up, I understand, on the LSP. But the thing about outside bodies is there's all different types of outside bodies. You've only got to look at the list here. And some of those outside bodies actually are important to the functions of this council, some are less so, but we engage with the wider community. And I think your motion, which is put across in a very negative and, what shall I say, a very negative and disrespectful way, when you yourself didn't even turn up at the LSP meeting, for instance, just one example, that if you're going to, if you're going to do this properly, then what I would suggest is, if you have an issue about any outside body, and you come to me, I'll make sure you get information back, any member that is. If you think something's not happening on the outside bodies, come to me and I can tell you it's all.
It's not my phone, that's my alarm for my tablet, so I need to get it.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just don't want it told off.
Tell us about interruption. I apologise. I did ask you to do that just last night. So I was just going to say respectfully though, seriously, that outside bodies, there's all sorts of different types of outside bodies. Some don't actually meet, actually, find out one or two, aren't very active at all. Some that are, and sometimes we actually remove ourselves from outside bodies where they're not active. But probably some reports have been coming through, which you recognise.
Yes,
yeah. And obviously you can always ask, Councillor or anyone else in this council, can also ask anybody about their what they're doing on those outside bodies, or anything they want to know about those outside bodies directly to them. And therefore, I don't think this motion is irrelevant in my view. It's not enforceable anyway, and therefore we should reject it.
Agreed. With Councillor Miller back in the room, I now have another opportunity to commend him.
I can't cope with it, Kevin.
I commend him for having the way in which he put people onto the various task panels that related to the Joint Committee and the reorganisation. And I have spent many hours, a few hours that are here, going through discussions about constitutions, codes of conduct, and remedies for those who perhaps are deemed not to have followed the code of conduct. And it was sitting through one of these discussions that it suddenly occurred to me that we had actually been badly advised. It is absolutely right that we cannot remove a councillor as a councillor. We have been put here by our electors. Even our electors can't get rid of us until an election, and that's why we want to see another election. However, that can't be done. But if Councillor Miller finds that a portfolio holder is not properly doing his or her job as a portfolio holder, I hope that the leader of the council will say, so hang on, stop that, move out, I want to put somebody else in that position. They've recently had a situation like that, I understand, in the county council. We have had situations in parish councils where people have been deemed to have misbehaved, and there is nothing, and the advice that they got probably comes from this office, but the advice about that they cannot remove these people. They can't say that they're no longer a parish council because they have done something that brings the parish council into disrepute. All that the parish council can do is state that they will no longer serve on particular committees, or any of the committees that are appointed to it. Because it is the council that appoints people to be delegates in outside bodies, to be on different committees and everything else. And therefore the council can change its mind and say that because of the way you've behaved, or because of what you've done or not done, we are recalling you. We are rescinding your appointment and we'll put somebody else in place. So I think that if Councillor Miller were to read the words of that a little bit more carefully, and in the context of the advice that was given when this was first raised, there is not an inconsistency here. And it is the case that this council can actually take action in the sense of rescinding an appointment and making another in its place, if there is a sense within the council, and if the council makes the appointment, the council will need to attend to the change. But it is surely within our power to do that if the circumstances were to arise.
Chairman, if I may speak, because the reference there was being misadvised and the way the conversation panned out was, I think, aimed at Monshoff's advice, which is referenced in the motion. Clearly I didn't write the motion. One other thing I would clarify is that when I advised, it was on the enforceability of production of an annual report. Stop. No. Council points to committees, it points representatives to outside bodies, as it's done tonight. No. And in many ways, the last part of the motion, sort of, it can be dealt with via the usual process of, at the end of the year, if people haven't reported and the council doesn't like it, the council doesn't appoint them again. No. I advised on the production of the annual report. I could not enforce them. No.
Can I ask one clarification, Chair?
Very briefly, please.
Certainly, it is always, as it is with electors in the election of a councillor, another election will come along and they can decide to vote differently if they don't like what somebody has done. It's slightly different in the terms of appointments to an outside body. There is no follows intention that they're appointed for a year. The decision has been taken by the council. And what reason is there in law or in our constitution that would prevent the council from saying, look, we wish then to change that. We wish to annul that appointment of a delegate and to replace it with another member of council in the person's place. Sorry, very well done.
Chairman, appointment to an outside body is allowed for law. That can be done. The council has the power to revoke an appointment. There's a difference in the rules of committee appointments. We have not dealing with that.
Correct, Chairman, just on one point there, Councillor Richard. You make a very specific request here about not producing an annual report. What about non-attendance? That's another thing. If a member on the outside body hasn't attended, that could be another reason. I think your motion is very narrow. I think it's all about producing the report. And actually, a lot of people on outside bodies can make great contributions on behalf of the council and the public. And maybe they don't get the recognition for that. So I'll just be very careful about specifically saying just because they can't produce an annual report. Because it could be about attendance, as touched upon earlier. Non-attendance could be another reason. So I just think we should be careful. And I think the best way to handle this is, and I've said as a group leader, I'm sure Councillor Randall says as a group leader as well, that if there's, and now you've got more members on outside bodies, at least two, you actually...
Turn up.
Sorry, my deputy leader's misbehaving now. No, but seriously, I think it's important that we actually be sensible about this, and if there's concerns raised, come to me as group leader, and likewise to Councillor Randall for later. Obviously, our independent Lib Dem, Catherine Lomax, can report to herself.
Thank you. I think we've covered that one. So, those in favour of the motion? Those against? Thank you. So, moving on to item 15, reports of committees. Definitely in agreement with item 16, recommendation of committees, pages 75 to 78. The first item, SG 13/19/01, parking in Daventry District.
Thank you, Chairman. Scrutiny and improvement, a task panel looked into inconsiderate parking in Daventry, specifically just Daventry, not Daventry District. and it came up with a number of recommendations. Following discussion of that, the recommendations that are going forward are: one, that the council runs an information appeal campaign around inconsiderate parking and the rules. Two, the road joint action group set up publicity campaigns where inconsiderate parking causes public danger, and to instigate white line markings or traffic regulation orders where appropriate. Three, the council conducts formal research and on that basis adopts minimum parking requirements for any new house building projects or changes to existing dwellings. Four, the town council is invited to, if it concludes there is sufficient resident interest, procure a bulk contract on behalf of residents for drop curbs and related works. 5, Northamptonshire County Council be requested to install reinforced concrete stud lurches on Cowper Road, Daventry, with a view to extending the option elsewhere. A number of points were put forward at the strategy group, but of course some of them were impractical, like suggestions about putting white lines. I think it was on Byron Road, because the law just would still allow people to park along there. There was also the issue of putting crossovers in places where the footpath wouldn't take the weight of the vehicle in any event. So the final recommendations we've come up with are practical and can be implemented with the resources that are available. Thank you.
You have a second.
Thank you. Sorry. I worked on this project with Councillor Ritchie. It was fraught with a few problems in just understanding who was responsible for what, where, and when. So yes, it's in essence a little bit watered down, but we think at least we're making a certain amount of inroads into it. But again, unitary authority. And the structure we've got at the moment, it is difficult to actually, that's your responsibility, no, that's your responsibility. So we are a little bit where we are in this. But we do think that there's some firm suggestions in here that could work really, really well. And I have to say, I hope we approve it and get it through, because I think it's important to at least make a start. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment on point 5. The County Council recently asked from the County Councillors some projects to prioritise for highways. Cowper Road is one of those that I put in, so it would be very timely. I don't know whether the officer could just contact me so we link up my request to prioritise Cowper Road with another request from the district, gives it a little bit more weight, and hopefully maybe monies might be provided on their priority process. But that's certainly gone in with my County Council hat on, and I would like to link the two up just to making sure, and it's very timely that it's just went in the last week or so. If we could get that in the next couple of weeks, then that would be very good if possible. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, excuse my ignorance. On point 4, if I may, Daventry Town Council is invited to, if it concludes there is sufficient resident interest, procure a bulk contract on behalf of residents for drop curbs and related works. Are we saying that Daventry District Council will pay for that contract?
No,
we're not. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chairman. Number 5, I don't think there's a hope in hell in County Council doing anything to number 5. There are literally a 4-figure number of roads like Cowper Road, many a high 4-figure numbers across my own village as as probably at least 10 of them with a similar position where putting this instead of grass would alleviate parking. County couldn't afford it to do. Well, they can afford to do one, but once you serve one, everybody will be going, why haven't you done this one then? Why haven't you done that one? There are thousands and thousands of them. I don't think there's a hope in hell till you get it used to.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Councillor Wesley and myself had a similar argument during scrutiny and improvement about the whys and wherefores making a request to the County Council. Councillor Wesley won that debate, which is why we have the recommendation before us tonight. And actually, I'll just draw on my own experience as a county councillor. Sometimes you can be surprised if you do make a request and it gets in at the right time, and it's a request that's been somewhat on the radar of the county council. Sometimes the stars do align, and you end up with what you want. It happened just a couple of weeks ago in my own council division. I had a concern raised by a resident about a road within the division, and it just so happened that the county council were already aware, and they were able to just inch it up the priority list. So there is no harm in asking, and in fact, if we don't ask and we won't get. So I think it's a valid recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Following some of the things I've said in earlier debates, I'd just like to say that having these recommendations here means that I don't regard the scrutiny committee as being totally useless. But there are a couple of things that I would like to respond to. Is Cowper Road just one of hundreds of thousands of roads?
Yes.
Well, we only looked at Daventry and Daventry Town. In Daventry Town, there is only one other road that I'm aware of that is similar in characteristics to Cowper Road, and that is Dryden Avenue. What makes Cowper Road differently is that Cowper Road is a bus route, where Dryden Avenue merely adjoins roads. So it is not as if we're signaling out, just one road out of hundreds of thousands. It is a very particular road that we've chosen. What's more, it's a road that this council ought to know a lot about, because there have been lots of questions before. There have been petitions, there have been groups of residents from Cowper Road. People who worked for many years with my predecessor, Councillor Wong, they're trying to get this work done for them, but it never actually got anywhere, and they want to get it done. I would be very concerned if we were passing this with 0.5 there. If we're effectively saying, well, look, we feel that we have done our job, we fulfilled our responsibility by saying that we will ask the County Council to do something if we feel there isn't a hope in hell for the County Council doing it. This is not talking about a major bit of work, and I think that we need to hear back that if there's a total impasse with the County Council in getting them to act on this, then we need to consider whether we, as Daventry District, ought to be stepping in to see if we can do this ourselves.
So I've got speakers, Councillor Guildford and
Thank you. I was always brought up with the saying, if you don't ask, you don't get, which is what my colleague said earlier. Now, I've already reported earlier on in this council tonight how simple by asking, getting the right people round the table, working together, listening to each other, we came up with a solution for all and got what we wanted.
Well, Councillor Gilbert just said what I was going to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman. The problem is that these schemes are terribly expensive, and I think our officers could help them with their procurement process. I think they've been finding all these things, that their contracts are not well regulated. I just feel they're falling down. They're not getting best value for money. If they did get best value for money, we would be able to have more schemes, and they've been doing this for years.
Okay, so are we in agreement?
Agreed.
SG 14/19/01 local government pension scheme discretion.
Thank you, Chairman. This was a very technical paper, and we spent some time going through it, but we had a duty to review. However, none of the recommendations were there to reduce any benefits. Discretions were a continuation of those that already existed, but there was an addition of greater flexibility. And each application for discretion would be considered on its merits. The Executive Director advised that the main changes were in relation to the language in the policy and have been driven by this review of the scheme, which had been carried out by LGSS Pensions, and they were the administering authority. So we had to do this review, and this policy was the result of the review. Thank you, Chair.
Are we in agreement? Agreed. SG 15/1/19/01 Northamptonshire Waste Partnership Memorandum of Understanding.
The Northamptonshire Waste Partnership was created in 2004. The partnership is made up of collection and disposal authorities within Northamptonshire and is governed by a Memorandum of Understanding. Since that time, there has been a number of changes affecting the circumstances at the NWP, with the MOU consequently needing revision to reflect these changes. The report circulated and debated at strategy highlighted the changes that are currently needed. None of these changes affects the substance of what the NWP does. I therefore ask you to agree the recommendation as detailed in the text.
I just wanted to point out that the second recommendation mentions local government reorganisation in relation to 2020, and it may be that needs consideration as 2021, since we now know that is the date for local government reorganisation.
Okay, we'll agree?
Agreed.
SG 16/19/01 Overston Hall restoration.
Yes, Chairman. I'm not going to dwell on this. Overston Hall is one of the heritage assets of the district. We have a corporate policy that we will do our best to conserve and enhance our heritage. We have negotiated with the new owner of Overston Hall, who is bringing forward a proposal for its restoration, and we simply thought it would be helpful, if necessary, to be able to prepare a planning brief so that it made our position clear should that become necessary. It may not be necessary, so this recommendation simply asks Council to agree that we continue to support the restoration of Overston Hall, including through enabling development of a justified scale and nature as in the National Planning Policy Framework. Unless it becomes evident, it won't be required that we prepare a planning brief to show that we are supporting that and how we are supporting it. We are not committing ourselves to any expenditure other than the cost of preparing the report.
Can you give a second?
I was hoping so.
So we agree?
Can I just ask something? Back on page 46, where there's the summary, I don't really fully understand. The location of the enabling development does not have to be adjacent to the heritage asset that was being restored. Can you just clarify what it means, that sentence, please?
That simply means what it says. The enabling development is a possibility for the funding of the restoration, and it's up to this council as local planning authority to agree some suitable enabling development. But it may be, of course, that if and when the owner of Overston Hall gets permission to carry out his proposed restoration, he simply puts his hand in a very deep pocket and pays for it. So the enabling development is just that, it's only required if there is no other way of him funding it, and that's allowed for in national policy, but it's not tied to being in the immediate vicinity. So it could be anywhere within the planning authority's purview, provided that we are happy and agree with that. I don't know if that addresses your question. Anyway.
SG 21/19/01, council disposal of 32 houses.
Thank you, Chairman. Last July, Council rescinded its decision to sell the 32 houses on Livermore, which are owned by the Daventry Estate Company Limited, otherwise known as T-Deckel. Following that decision, a number of former tenants got together to say they felt they were misled about what the meaning of lifetime homes was, etc., and didn't understand. Some of them didn't understand what short-term tenancy was, quite frankly. But anyway, following off from that, scrutiny decided to pass the matter over to scrutiny to look into the cancellation of the intention to sell the houses, and they came up with a couple of recommendations. Well, they came up with several recommendations, two of which have come forward. The first one is the council and T-Deckel will take all necessary steps to maximise occupancy of vacant properties. And secondly, as a gesture of goodwill, the council issues a without prejudice apology in writing to all affected tenants who can legitimately be contacted for any misunderstanding that has taken place. The wording of the letter is to be referred to the chairman of the Scrutiny Improvement and the leader of the council for consideration prior to its issue. So there you have it, where the company is now going to take every step to maximise occupancy, which is good for income. And secondly, if anyone genuinely has been the victim of a misunderstanding about what a short hold tenancy is, what lifetime homes means, then of course they will probably receive an apology from the council. Such apology to be agreed jointly with Chairman Esmond. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I second the proposal. Let's have his open light.
As chair of T-Deckel, I'd like to reassure everyone that the T-Deckel does take all necessary steps to maximise the occupancy of vacant properties, and that you should look at this in the context of the report as it was then, when we'd be given the directive to leave properties vacant with a view to sale. So it goes without saying, we let as soon as we can. We have a very, very low void rate. The second item, I don't know whether this applies elsewhere, but in the NHS we have something which I'm sure Councillor Privy will know about, the duty of candor, that even, you know, we should apologise if a person feels that they've had a wrongdoing against them. And I really do feel that you could apply it here, that we have a duty of candor to write
Councillor thank you. I was going to say, and quite soon, this is another example of scrutiny and improvement actually helping us get to the right decision. And I, for one, when this first was muted that we were going to sell them, well, not sleepless nights, but was really concerned about whether this was the right thing to do. So I'm grateful for scrutiny. I'm also aware that we had a big long debate about compensation, about this and about the other. But the bottom line is, we are going to apologise for those people that we affected, and we did affect people. There is no question about that. but the wrong was put right. The houses weren't sold, and that is the substantive bit. The fact that we made the right decision in the end by this council. I wish we hadn't been through the process which caused the residents discomfort and harm and anxiety, but we got there in the end, and I'm grateful that we did, and I want to thank Scrutiny Improvement for helping us get to the right decision. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, not only were the people who rented the houses misled, I was totally misled when I voted for it in council, because it was deemed as a long-term investment. And had Councillor Long still been on the council at that time, he would have stood up and spoken exactly about what the investment was about, and indeed it was supposed to be long-term investment. And even he himself, I spoke to him as portfolio holder of finance at that time, he deemed also that he felt they were sold as homes for life, which meaning they were going to be long time and somebody would be in there until they chose to move out rather than us selling off the properties. A lot of those, well, all of those residents were deeply, deeply distraught, upset. Some have nearly got to the point where they've had breakdowns, children have been moved out of school. It has been absolutely heartbreaking to witness what those residents have gone through. And now to hear people in this chamber say, or maybe we got it wrong. We definitely did get it wrong. And just to say that we would just offer them an apology when they have had their lives turned upside down, I think it's an absolute disgrace. And I think that we should have compensated those residents. It wasn't just a rented home that they thought was going to be short term. They'd paid money to have things done on the garden, all different things, because they felt that they were going to be in there for as long as they wanted to. So I would recommend that everybody that went through all that procedure should be compensated with, a monetary gesture, and I would suggest £1,000.
We agree? No. Quick point, Richard. Councillor Gifford makes a good point, actually, working in an NHS. Duty of candour, no faux apologies. When you're wrong, you're wrong. So when I come and read this, I don't know if you penned it, Councillor James, when you say gesture of goodwill, that's got an evocative meaning to it, and someone has an opinion. I will refer to Councillor Brown and my membership of the Scrutiny Improvement Committee, especially Councillor Morgan, who I learned from. When we're writing recommendations, you know, to be measurable, somewhat smart, and not have language, because if I was reading that, when you heard today how people were upset, how people were made homeless over a few months, having to move, lost their communities, the gesture of goodwill is not the best approach.
Thank you, Chair. I've spoken so much at other meetings on these issues that I only want to confine my remarks to a couple of things that have been said here. Councillor Arder says that we got there in the end. We didn't sell the houses, so we did the right thing. We put people into a position in which they felt they had no choice but to move. And these were not people who are your standard occupants of rented accommodation. We're dealing with elderly people who thought they were there for life. And you can read through the minutes and all the notes as to why they had a very good reason for believing that. We were dealing with people who moved because one of the couple had cancer and they didn't want, at a critical time in their treatment, to be given 2 months' notice. We're talking about another couple who felt they moved because one was awaiting a major heart operation and they didn't want to be found in the position of needing to move just when that came up. When you have a family that had 4 children, they knew the difficulties that they would face if they were suddenly given only 2 months to find rented accommodation that would accommodate them all, and therefore they moved. They're not back where they started. They have suffered. And there was huge offence, Scotts, by remarks that were made at the strategy group meeting when there was a reference that they didn't want to have a compensation culture. We're not talking about this. If we were talking about compensation for hurt feelings, we'd be talking about a damn sight more than 2,000 I propose. The figures that we're talking about are the actual costs that people had in moving from their accommodation in Middlemore, in moving elsewhere. The cost of hiring a removal company or a removal van, the costs of getting any carpets and curtains to be altered. There were costs and things they couldn't take with them, the greenhouses and stuff that they had to leave behind. These are real costs that I just feel that we should look for a way of repaying. I feel it is the least that we can do in these circumstances. I say there's that huge anger about it simply being regarded as the compensation culture. These are costs. It's money that people had to pay or felt they had to pay because we had told them that for a period of time they could be moved at 2 months' notice, and that wasn't that was not an option. Their point in life that they could contemplate.
So we have a recommendation for us.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to prolong this, and I think we all felt a degree of anxiety and sorrow for the suffering these people had. But I would point out it was not the fault of our officers, because I remember reading the original reports and they were going to be short-hold tenancies, and I thought at the time I wouldn't want to pay a market rent on a brand new house on a short-hold tenancy when I knew I could be turned out, because the landlord has that right. And I'm very, very sorry these people didn't understand that, and it has been terrible for them. And I'm very sorry about that, but it was not the fault of our officers.
Councillor James, then Councillor Rowe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've dealt with quite a lot of short-hold tenancies, and I know how one is created, and I know how one is terminated, and the various grounds for terminating. And in all the years that short-hold tenancies have been in being, and that I've had anything to do with them, I have never met anyone who doesn't understand that short-hold means short-hold. For when these tenancies were originally introduced, government made it quite clear that if a short-hold tenancy is created in the proper way and terminated in the proper way, then vacant possession of that property will be given. It's as simple as that. And, I've seen properties that are let to people that can barely speak a word of English, and yet they know what a short-hold tenancy is. I think what we've seen, I'm grateful to the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee for looking at it, but what we've seen here tonight and heard is a classic dueling of the lily. I do not believe that many of these people were misled. I remember the notice boards because it's in my ward. I know what a lifetime home is. I know what the Daventry Express described a lifetime home as, and so does anyone else who actually went in one. They weren't meant to be homes for life as such. They were meant to be homes which could be used for a person's lifetime. So I think gilding of the lily is very appropriate in this case. We believe that there may have been the odd one or two. Certainly, to my expert knowledge, there might have been one grey area there, at least one grey area. But I can tell you this, that I think a lot of people are making a great issue over something that is very, very straightforward. And nevertheless, the council has decided that it is prepared to make that gesture of goodwill, that little climb down to say that we're very sorry. In simple terms, we're very sorry that we misunderstood the situation here. And as for the compensation which has been suggested, yes, it is typical of today's compensation culture. If there's the slightest little thing goes wrong, up goes the cry, we want money, we want money. And I think that the suggestions that have been made are very appropriate in this case. A mistake may have happened in your case, but generally speaking, a right decision was made by the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having met nearly all of the residents who continue to reside on Middlemore in the Tea Depot houses and several others who have moved out, I was never given any cause to doubt their sincerity or the fact that the misunderstanding that had taken root was genuinely held. However, in looking at all the evidence available, evidence within the council, evidence within the local press and the way that the homes were marketed, there was a clear trail of evidence to suggest that the council had always approached this objective as an investment. They were market rents. They were clearly standard tenancy agreements that could be terminated at a standard under a standard notice period. And there was not a single piece of evidence to show that DDC had been negligent in its marketing of the houses, or that DDC had acted with a shred of malice or malintent. Yes, a misunderstanding took root, and I think that was perfectly innocent. These things happen, and it's quite right that we follow that NHS ethos of saying maybe we could have done better, and we apologise if you feel that we could have done better. I'm comfortable with the language used in the recommendations, but I take Councillor Pritchard's constructive criticism on board, and I will continue to bear that in mind when drafting future recommendations. Councillor Ritchie suggests that compensation should be awarded on the basis that people were told that tenancies could be terminated. Well, you're almost then creating a disincentive for future councils, or indeed this council, to be a good landlord, to give tenants notice that we may take a course of action that could be detrimental, or that they need to bear in mind when taking life decisions. The council or Tea Depot could very well have taken the approach of simply serving notice on tenants that their tenancies would be terminated under the standard notice period. Not that we were considering doing so, as the letter stated. So I think it's very, very dangerous to start suggesting that compensation should be awarded in those circumstances. I understand the hurt and the inconvenience that people feel they have suffered. But for me, and it is my view after taking an objective look at the evidence and taking all manner of information into account, is that we have to set a very high bar before we start awarding compensation for the actions of this council. In my view, and on the basis of the evidence I've seen, this council did not act in a manner that merits the award of compensation. And so I very much stand by the recommendations within my report, and I hope that now we can draw a line under the matter, bearing in mind that the first recommendation that didn't appear on the papers tonight was that we do not proceed with the sale of 32 houses as we were originally planning to do. And for us to have decided on that is one of the things that I'm most proud about in my 3 years to date as a district councillor. I think that was absolutely the right decision. It's one that everyone in this chamber can be proud of. And as we conclude this matter, I think that on balance we've come to all the right decisions, although I acknowledge my colleague's right to disagree with that conclusion.
Okay, so Councillor Nicolai, very briefly. Thank you, Chairman. Two questions. Firstly, on paragraph 2 of this, can we be assured that any letter that goes out will have been approved by the council's lawyers before it goes out? And secondly, given that we're talking about issues relating to the council's legal position vis-à-vis the tenants or former tenants in some cases of these properties, and people are throwing words like compensation around, should this not have been on the private agenda?
Short answer, consider the time, no. We're able to deal with it, we're dealing individually, we're dealing with the principal here.
Okay, so we've got a recommendation before us. I think we're going to show of hands on this one. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, was that an answer to my first question? No, it won't be going to the lawyers before it goes out.
Sorry, I was answering the second question. In terms of the lawyers, we always make sure we've got professional contributions. So we have including lawyers.
We have recommendations, we have a show of hands. We are fast approaching 9:50.
Suppose we finish, Chairman.
So moving swiftly on, SG 23/19, the White's Capital Neighbourhood Development Plan.
Yes, Chairman, I'll make this as quick as I can. Agreed. We've been as a council very successful in encouraging neighbourhood development planning. This is another one of those successes. The examination was successful, the major modifications and minor modifications have been applied. We're recommending that it goes for a referendum within the parish, which is defined as the Southerton neighbourhood area, next month, and a decision statement be issued in accordance with our usual practice.
Do you have a second?
I'd like to second this as ward member. I did have a long. So I will just read the first paragraph and the second one, and that is, as I say, I'd like to second this recommendation. A significant amount of hard work and resource time has gone into producing a plan, not only by Southampton Parish Council, but by the residents involved within the parish. I really do believe the final plan produced really supports Southampton's sustainability.
Agree. On recommendation, so SG 24/19/01 Community Government Review 2018.
Wake up.
Sorry. Brain dead, my fault. I do apologise, Chair. So much so, I'll forget to be put forward the Community Governance Review and the recommendation as written and set out in Appendix 1 of the report, and that we grant the powers to the Executive Director Resources to make and publish the consequential review.
Thank you. Second that?
Agreed.
Accept that one again.
Agree.
Okay, so 9:15, would you like us to push through, or would you like So we've got item 17. We've got to use the gavel, thank you. So scheduled meetings changed to a meeting date. Please note the Appeal of the Standards Committee scheduled for the 4th of June 2019 will now take place on the 13th of June 2019. And item 18, any urgent business? Vice Chairman. Thank you. Okay, well I can formally close the meeting and ask if you'd like to join me for refreshment.